some players shout. Bobby Lennox ran and the pitch did the talking. He just turned, head down, and jogged back to the halfway line quiet as thunder before the storm. Because Bobby Lennox wasn't built for spectacle. He was built for speed, relentless, ruthless speed. Before you knew his name, you saw the blur. Before you saw the number on his back, you felt the panic in defenders' legs. They called him the buzzbomb. And if you blinked, you missed him. He wasn't the loudest lion. He didn't need to be. He was the one who never stopped running even when the others slowed down. He lifted 11 league titles, 8 Scottish Cups, 5 League Cups, and stood on the turf in Lisbon when history was made. But he never begged for memory. He just kept moving and let the silence after the sprint tell the story. He ran so every generation after him would know what loyalty at full pace looked like. Subscribe if you still believe the soul of football isn't sold in headlines, but earned in movement. This is Bobby Lennox, and this is what happens when a man runs his way into eternity. Bobby Lennox was born on the 30th of August 1943 in the coastal town of Saltcoats, Ayrshire, a place where football wasn't glamour, it was grit beneath your fingernails. There were no agents, no academy offers, just wind, cold, and the echo of a ball against brick. As a teenager, he played for Ardea Recreation, a junior side with no spotlight, just hard tackles, loose gravel, and empty pockets. But Bobby didn't need polish. He had pace, and people were starting to notice. In 1961, at 18 years old, he signed for Celtic. No ceremony, no cameras, just a name on a form and a boy ready to run through walls. He made his first team debut in March 1962. He was still just a kid, but he moved like someone chasing time itself. There were no headlines, but there were murmurs. Who's that lad on the wing? He doesn't stop. To his teammates, he was Lemon. To defenders, he was the buzzbomb. One of his first teammates said, "You couldn't mark him. You couldn't even find him. By the time you turned, he was gone." And just like that, Celtic had a new kind of threat. He wasn't a Lisbon Lion yet, but the first paw prints had landed, and they were moving fast. By 1965, Bobby Lennox had moved from promise to presence, and Celtic under Jock Stein were rising like a storm. On 24th April 1965, at Hampden Park, Lennox started in the Scottish Cup final against Dunfermline. The match was chaos, end to end. No breath between passes. But when full time came, it was Celtic 3, Dunfermline 2. Lennox had his first major honor, and he didn't stop to admire it. He just ran back to the halfway line the way he always did. The following season, Celtic doubled down. By 1966, they were lifting the Scottish League and the League Cup, and Lennox was no longer just a winger. He was a blade on the left. 29th October, 1966, League Cup final versus Rangers. The air was thick, the rivalry unforgiving, and Bobby Lennox broke it open. One moment of sharp instinct, one flash of movement, one low finish that beat the keeper and decided the match. Celtic won, Rangers 0. Cup won, silence delivered. By now, he wasn't just fast. He was feared. He'd go on to score goals in all competitions that season. But he didn't count them. He just chased the next one. 25th May 1967. Lisbon, Estadio Nacional. European Cup final. Celtic versus Inter Milan. Scotland versus Italy. Working class grit versus defensive royalty. The first British club to reach the summit. The first team that believed they could dance with Europe's elite and win. Inter were favorites. Disciplined, cold. They had the tactics, the history, the 1-0 script. But Celtic had something else. They had a plan called chaos, and Bobby Lennox was its most dangerous element. In 1967, Lennox married, and the game stayed in the blood. His son Gary would follow his path into the world of football. Jock Stein didn't ask his men to contain Inter. He asked them to tear through them, and Lennox didn't hesitate. He ran at them like a man chasing thunder, pulled defenders wide, dragged lines apart, and opened pockets of space that didn't exist until he made them. He didn't score, but he broke Inter's shape over and over until their famous defense wasn't a wall, it was a question mark. Jock Stein once said, "Bobby could run all day and still have a sprint left in him." In Lisbon, he did both. All day, every sprint, never slowing, never breaking. Celtic 2, Inter Milan 1. The first British champions of Europe, the Lisbon Lions. And among them, number 11, Bobby Lennox. No pose, no point to the sky, just that same jog back to the halfway line. Because for Lennox, Lisbon wasn't a stage, it was a shift, and he was there to do the work. 15th April 1967, Wembley Stadium, Scotland versus England. 11 months earlier, the English had lifted the World Cup. Now they were unbeaten, untouchable, roaring in white. But across the tunnel stood Bobby Lennox, fresh off a season of relentless running, unbothered by reputations, uninterested in anyone's crown. It wasn't just a match, it was a warning. From the first whistle, Scotland pressed like men possessed. And when the second goal came, it was Lennox who put the dagger in. A clean, ice-cold finish. Timing perfect, execution brutal. Bobby Lennox scored at Wembley, against the champions of the world, on their home ground, in front of 100,000. That day, Scotland won 3-2. But for many, it wasn't just a win, it was a declaration. The Lisbon Lion had struck early. And in a season where Celtic would rule Europe, Bobby Lennox had already proved he could bring that same fire to the national shirt. He became the first Celtic player ever to score for Scotland at Wembley. But did he gloat? Did he celebrate? No. He turned, as always, and jogged back to position. Because Bobby Lennox didn't play for glory. He played to leave defenders in his dust and history trying to catch up. That spring, he made legends blink twice, Inter Milan and England. And in both stadiums, he left only one thing behind: the sound of running. If 1967 was the year Bobby Lennox became immortal, then 1968 was the year he outran the numbers trying to define him. He placed third in the European Golden Boot in 1967-68. From the wing. Not a striker, not a poacher, just a man who couldn't stop moving. It wasn't just the most he'd ever scored. It wasn't just the best at Celtic. It was third in Europe behind only Eusebio and Gerd Müller in the European Golden Boot standings. No tricks, no penalties, just sprints, finishes, and the blur of green and white cutting through defenses like a knife through fog. From 1965 to 1974, Lennox helped Celtic win 9 consecutive league titles. That still echoes across the Scottish game. Every season, he was there. Flying down the wing, pulling markers wide, chipping in double figures like it was ordinary. It wasn't. And when the 1970 European Cup final came around, he was still there, still running, still cutting. Celtic faced Feyenoord that day, a different challenge, a different heartbreak. They lost 2-1 in extra time. But Bobby? He never dipped, never disappeared, because Lennox didn't play for spotlight finals. He played for every minute between them. By then, his total goals were into the 200s. His boots weren't clean anymore, they were lined with history. He didn't slow, he just reloaded. Every goal came with the same rhythm. Sprint, strike, silence, turn, and go again. While others chased headlines, Bobby Lennox quietly became a scoring machine in motion, and the wing was just the starting line. By 1978, Bobby Lennox had already given Celtic everything. 11 league titles, countless goals, a legacy that walked tall beside giants. So when he crossed the Atlantic to join the Houston Hurricane in the NASL, it looked like a curtain call, a final sprint in the sun. But Lennox didn't go to fade. He went to breathe and to prove that his legs, at 35, still had stories left in them. His time in Texas was short, just one season. But even on foreign turf, the instincts stayed sharp. The same darting runs, the same keen eye for space. And then, just like that, he returned. Back to Celtic, back to paradise. Not for a testimonial lap, but for 2 more seasons of hard, real football. It wasn't ceremonial, it was essential. He added 1 more league title in 1979 and a Scottish Cup in 1980 because of course he did. That's what Bobby Lennox did. He added. He joined Celtic's coaching staff in November 1980, effectively concluding his playing era with the club. He went on to score 301 goals in all competitions, second only to Jimmy McGrory. Of those, 171 were scored in the Scottish League. No tricks, no PR campaigns, no drama. Just numbers, real ones. And medals, 25 major honors in total, all won in the same shirt. When it ended, there was no parade. Just a packed stadium whispering the truth. Celtic's most underrated genius had left the stage. Quietly, classically. Some players leave a noise behind. Bobby Lennox left an echo. A quiet, unstoppable echo, the kind that doesn't fade, because it was never built on flash to begin with. He didn't shout for attention. He never had to. He wasn't captain, wasn't the media darling, wasn't the loudest voice in the tunnel. But when Celtic fans speak of greatness, his name always finds its way in, because Lennox was the soul of consistency. He showed up, he delivered, he endured. Long after hanging up his boots, he remained at the club quietly working behind the scenes, giving back on the coaching staff. Because Bobby Lennox didn't wear the badge, he lived it. In 1981, he was awarded an MBE. In 1982, he published A Million Miles for Celtic. And in 2002, Celtic fans immortalized him once more, voting Lennox into the club's all-time 11. Proof that the wing he ran for years still echoes in memory. In 2005, he was inducted into the Scottish Football Hall of Fame. And in Saltcoats, the town that raised him a statue stands in his honor. Not arms raised, but mid-sprint. Still chasing the ball. Because that's how he's remembered. If you ever felt the Lisbon roar, if you've seen a winger play with honest fire, if you know what it means to win without boasting, then remember Bobby Lennox. Subscribe for more legends told the way they deserve, where football was family and heroes were humble.